So, class, here we are at week 5. We're getting closer to the end. We're really moving along now. And what we're going to be talking about is energy in the electric grid. So, this is energy we use to generate electricity, commonly billed out as kilowatt hours. I want to talk to you about a little bit the difference between power and energy because people get that mixed up. I see journalists get it mixed up a lot. I don't want you to get it mixed up. If you think about power and energy, you can think about them almost the same as you think about distance and speed. And what do I mean by this? Well, you have miles, how far you've gone. That's on your odometer, right? And so if you look at the odometer of your car, it will say maybe your car is like mine and it's a bit older and it's gone about 150,000 miles. Maybe you have a fresh new car and it's only gone about 20,000 miles. Whatever it happens to be, it records each mile you go, just like that meter on the side of your house that records how many kilowatt hours you use. And it ticks by with each one you use. And that's sort of the mileage you put on your house, and that's energy. Power is kilowatt hours per hour. Of course, if you draw out kWh per hour over H, the H's cancel and you're left with just kilowatts, right? And so a kilowatt is how fast you're sucking up kilowatt hours or the speed at which you're using energy, which is power, right? So if you think about it that way, it's just like your speedometer on your car. And you can see how fast you're going, depending on how hard you mash that pedal. And you might be going fast enough that you're going a lot of distance quickly, right? So if you're going 60 miles an hour, you're adding 60 miles onto that odometer really fast. But it doesn't tell you, just knowing that you're going 60 miles per hour, how far that car has gone in its lifetime. Much the same, knowing how much power your house is using at any moment doesn't tell you how much energy it used over its lifetime or that month or that week or that day or whatever. So don't get energy and power mixed up. Power is more like speed, energy is more like distance. All right? And if you get them mixed up, you're going to sound silly. How are you going to sound silly? You're going to say, oh, I live 20 miles an hour away from the nearest grocery store. Instead of I live 20 miles away from the nearest grocery store. And if you see how that sounds silly, talking about how I use 20 kilowatt hours more than my neighbor makes perfect sense. But I use 20 kilowatts more than my neighbor. It's just as silly as 20 miles per hour from the next grocery store. So hopefully that's clarified. Uh, Next thing I want to do, just to sort of put this week into context for you as you go through reading everything, I want you to think about the federal, state, and local level in government, and I want you to think about the electric grid and how it goes from maybe the largest power plants in the country on those big, honking, high voltage power lines that rip through the woods, and you see them clear cut a path through, and you know that they're not around too often, but you've seen them when you drive around. Those giant power lines we call transmission lines, and the big energy production infrastructure and the big honking high voltage transmission lines are governed by the federal government, namely by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, otherwise known as FERC. FERC stops, though, once you get to the state level. So eventually that transmission line is going to come down, and they're going to downstep it into a substation. They're going to downstep that to the little bitty power lines you see along every road on telephone poles, the ones that go into your house. Those are called distribution lines. So there's transmission, the big honking high voltage power lines, and distribution, the little tiny side of the road telephone poles that carry those wires around. Now, the power coming on those wires is not high voltage, right? It's not something crazy. It's the typical, 120 volt, 240 volt AC that's coming into the side of your house. So you can realize that, they're stepping the whole thing down and moving it around and lowering the voltage as it comes down towards you because higher voltage has less heat loss, but eventually you want to get it into a usable form. Why go through all this? Because all of that distribution infrastructure is regulated not at the federal level. There are not really any federal regulations to speak of that are terribly important, but at the state level. And in this case, in Rhode Island, by the State Public Utilities Commission, which is a quasi-judicial commission currently consisting of 3 members who determines exactly how that grid should be built out and what we should do with it and how it should be operated by whichever company is giving authority to operate it. In this case, Rhode Island Energy nowadays. So, who operates the transmission stuff at the transmission level? In New England, it's a group called ISO New England, and I have provided a video for you down below this so you can get to know a little bit about ISO New England and what they do. You can see their giant command center in Holyoke in the thumbnail. It looks kind of futuristic. It's pretty neat. I want you to realize that this place exists and that they do a lot of the heavy load balancing for the region, trying to make sure we don't end up with brownouts and whatnot in New England. Not every state has one of these. Not every region has one of these. So I provided some maps that I think will also clarify at the large scale transmission level um, what we have for interconnections, physical interconnections, and what we have for regional transmission organizations and independent system operators who manage the large scale grid, uh, either for a state like New York ISO or for a region like ISO New England. So I hope that this video helps clarify your readings for this week and that the pictures and video I provided help clarify it as well. I look forward to having discussions with you all about how energy policy actually works in the electric arena and how maybe you think it should work. Um, and next week we will be moving into transportation. We'll start talking about vehicles, electric vehicles, other forms of transportation, trains, planes. We'll wrap our heads around how we're going to get ourselves from where we are today to where we're going to be in 30, 40, 50 years from now. So until then, I will see you next week.